What's up, guys? It's Bromley. We're back. Today, I'm going to tackle a question about overtraining, which is a pretty popular question. This actually came from Daniel Earp. I'm making my way down the Q&A list from, okay, guys, come on. Oh, you guys are distracting. Make my way down the list from the Patreon. Go ahead and check out the Patreon. We got some good videos up. I'll have about a 3-month lag before I release them to the general population. But I got like a review of the cube method. I got an idea on what the best intermediate program is for the lazy lifter. The last one we did is whether or not deadlifts are dangerous. That was some controversy right there. I'm going to get to that in a minute. If you don't care about any of the updates, I'm going to give you flash forward about 2 minutes from now, and then I'll in the next segment, and then I'll get to that. But real quick, I want to talk about Clash on the Coast, because for any of you that are wondering about the growth of the sport, if you're fans, if you like to watch lifting or strongman, and if you've been really oriented towards supporting the growth of that sport, this is exactly how I'm going to tell you how to support. You need to invest time and attention towards companies that are putting effort and resources towards the top. You know, it's great to have a million different amateur contests that nobody knows or cares about, because you get participation hype and you get a foundation of lifters. You know, you get people engaged in it, and that's great, but that's only part of the puzzle. Nobody really cares about rec league football. You know, they care about the NFL. Nobody really cares about the McDojos next to your local grocery store. They care about the UFC. So if nobody is really dumping attention and money and resources and giving promotion to those upper echelons of performance, the sport is not going to grow to the capacity it needs to. Well, thank God we finally hit a tipping point where people are starting to invest and take note and pay attention. We've had growth of the Arnold over the last decade, which has been massive. World's Strongest Man, all of these kind of satellite contests are starting to get bigger. Core Sports is absolutely huge. And Core Sports is, go ahead and sign up. It's absolutely free. Core Sports, they did a lot of the record breakers. Thor's deadlift record that he hit on Core Sports. It's free to stream all these events. I mean, don't be intimidated when it says sign up, because there's a free option. Go ahead and sign up. They're doing arm wrestling stuff. They're doing a lot more stuff with strength sports. And that's where you want to support. So I'm going to keep talking about Clash on the Coast, because it really is a huge step forward. They're giving attention to the middleweight. It's one of the biggest shows, period, and you guys aren't going to want to miss it. I just got excited because they were supposed to have a car deadlift in the heats, in the qualifiers, and then a squat in the finals. Well, they swapped it, and squatting is a huge lift for me, so it increases my chance greatly of making it to the finals. To this day, one of my biggest performances that I'm proud of was matching Larry Wheels in the lever squat at the Fit Expo, which was his first strongman show. Actually, I went first, so I'm going to go ahead and say that Larry Wheels matched me. Actually, I weighted 4 pounds lighter than he did, so I'm going to call it a win. I'm just kidding. Qualifying your performance with weight is kind of lame. Don't be that guy. But that's one of the things that I really was very proud of, and it's been a strength of mine. I got hobbit legs. I go down, I come up. That one did not take a lot of technical practice for me to get good at. So anyways, I'm very excited about that, and it's the whole World's Strongest Man barrels to boxes on an axle. So I already got that. In fact, I'll film that tonight. I'm supposed to train it tonight. So I'll show you guys what that looks like. But sign up for Core Sports. You're going to be able to see this 3-day massive contest. You got Martins Lisis judging. You got Rob Kearney emceeing. I think Lauren Chalet is supposed to be there. You got the record breakers on the day before for the log American record. You got a bunch of 450 plus log pressers. There's like 15 Americans that are like all over a 440 log. And it's going to be nasty. Nathan Goldtree is a friend of mine. Jose Baez, who I've competed with before. You get some of these monsters. They also have the women's division. They're doing women's record breakers for, I want to say, a log, dumbbell, block press. God, Nadia Stour is going to be there. She's a town over. It's about 20 miles from here. This girl is an absolute freak. She didn't even start lifting weights, I don't think, until a few years ago, but she just got nasty strong, nasty fast. As a middleweight, I mean, she's close to a 600-pound deadlift. She's gotten close to or broke the middleweight log press record in training multiple times. I think she has like a 270 log press. It's going to be nasty. So join Core Sports April 29th. Watch it. It's going to be a fantastic show, and it'll make sure that more of these divisions grow, and it selects for the best performances you want to see. So that's my 2 cents on that. Thanks for toughing out that. We are now going into the main question. Overtraining, is it a thing? This comes from Daniel Earp. Again, I'm working on the list of Patreon members who have left some really good questions for me. He said, I guess institutions like barbell medicine is kind of known for this, where they kind of dismiss overtraining as being they're really oriented towards, I think, what they call the nocebo, which is people underestimating their abilities or being overly sensitive with things like injuries and setbacks and overtraining. So that's kind of part of their brand. but he mentioned that they said something like it really only happens in like marathon runners, whatever. It's not something lifters have to deal with. So this is kind of a problem when we start talking about the more non-clinical, non-academic side. And I always say that the academic component of strength sports and strength science is behind 20, 30 years behind what goes on in the field every day. And that's kind of a weird dynamic because in academia, that's where we really quantify and classify things, or you should anyways, so that you can't have these semantic arguments because people are using definitions differently. I mean, any STEM field, any science should have very clear-cut definitions. We have a lot that has stemmed from kind of bro sciencey definitions that we think are applicable, but we're kind of loose with, and we often end up arguing against different things. For instance, deloading. It's so commonly used. I don't think the term deload is defined in any text, at least not that I'm aware of. I have a few texts. I've looked for it. I got into an argument with somebody who said, well, you know, BOMPA defines it as a volume drop, not an intensity drop. And I'm like, well, I have BOMPA's textbook and I didn't see that in there. I've looked in the glossary and index. I don't see it there. You know, something like a taper is a deload, but a deload isn't necessarily a taper. I see deload as just meaning kind of a set drop in any type of training stress intentionally. So that's very loose, right? So when you're talking about deloads, people might be talking about different things. Overtraining is another one. What do we mean by overtraining? Well, I see overtraining as meaning any amount of training that is so consistently building fatigue that it surpasses your ability to adapt to that stress. So it's a point where you'll see, I think a lot of times it's marked by high cortisol levels, disruption of sleep, like it really messes you up and then performance tanks, right? Now, that being said, if you guys watch like Mike Israel's stuff, you know, the saying that fatigue masks fitness, and that's actually how peaks happen. We train, we build up fatigue, and then when you peel that fatigue away by cutting volume back, that allows your strength to skyrocket because your peak strength, your potential strength is masked by all the work you're doing. And there's kind of a paradox there because if you are recovered enough to express true strength, that means you're not training hard enough to continue growing. So there's this balance you have to walk, right? So with overtraining, I'm thinking of anything that is an excessive amount of training that is detrimental to growth. So given that definition that I'm going to go off of, I think the idea that overtraining is bunk is garbage. I think everybody at some point has trained excessively, or most people have. They've gone too hard for too long. They've gotten to the point where it's not sustainable. If it's not actual performance, it might be wear and inflammation on the joints. Anybody who's tried running through a crazy, anybody who's ran through small off, even if your muscles recover, and they recover very quick. If it was just muscles, high intensity, high frequency, straight Bulgarian, that'd be the way to go. But structurally, can you recover? Are you going to get inflammation in your tendons and your joints? Is it going to cause like bursitis or other problems that are a byproduct of just going hard in the paint too often, too long? Even if we put that on the back burner and just talk about systemic recovery in general, as far as like the tissues, the muscles' ability to adapt, or the nervous system's ability to continue putting out more and more output, then absolutely everybody at some point has probably flirted with something that looks like overtraining. Now, this is the key. All you really have to keep track of as far as training organization goes is a baseline of work, how to progress that work over time at a rate that is sustainable. So if you have different flavors of training, you might have something that's supposed to follow this progression indefinitely until you burn out. If you're a novice and you're doing starting strength, squat 3 times a week, add 5 pounds literally every time. You can do that for months. As you get stronger, those hard efforts have to be paced further apart because you won't recover fast enough to actually adapt. You'll be training too often. That will lead you to overtraining. And again, people that have tried to grind it out too long have experienced that at some point. In terms of more blocked off training or something that looks more like traditional periodization, we're looking at more discrete blocks where each type of progression only lasts for 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, something like that. So if you're frequently pivoting or switching to a different stimulus where it's novel, you kind of revisit those newbie gains, and it's a form of recovery. Variation serves pretty well as a form of recovery if you're switching up the mode of exercise or working in a different threshold. So keep that in mind. So all you have to know is what your timeline is. I set a baseline of work. This is the threshold I'm working in. These are the exercises I'm applying it to. I'm going to carry that on at some rate with a deadline in mind. Again, if you're a novice, that deadline might be 4 months down. If you're more intermediate and you're working in shorter blocks with the intention of every 4 or 5 weeks switching to a different threshold, something that's defined that you're getting into early on, it's less of a risk. And actually, that's one of the reasons I like it, because it gives you kind of carte blanche to push it a little more as you get to the end of each block, because you know you have recovery coming on the other end. That's also what deloads were supposed to do. You know, old school powerlifting, you'd have guys that would train very, very heavy multiple weeks in a row, and they're like, okay, I can't keep doing that because eventually I regress. Well, all you do is stick a deload in there every 4th week, and voila, you're rediscovering your ability to keep hitting the gas and seeing that progression. So I think overtraining in the sense of like, I'm working so hard that I can't sleep and I can't focus at work. Very few people probably get to that point, but I've met them. Even a good friend of mine, Eric King, actually, very hard worker. And since I've known him, he's consistently gotten stronger. He's also a little injury prone. He'll have issues here and there. And there have been plenty of times where I'm like, dude, you've been hitting the gas in the same threshold for like too long. Switch to something else, or just let yourself clear out. Or better yet, take 6 or 8 weeks and just do some high intensity, low volume training. Cut out a bunch of the fluff you love to do, because he'll get manic and just work himself into the ground. Long term, there was a net benefit to that. But in the short term, he's ran into brick walls, and he's had those little overuse issues and injuries that have popped up that have sidelined him a little bit. And it's like, you're so fatigued all the time that if you could just peel the fatigue back just long enough to experience that load fresh, you might get a whole new wave of adaptation, a whole new surge of strength. And that plays in very well to the base peak dynamic that I write about in my book. It's like, get periods of high volume where you're actively trying to stay in that fatigue threshold, adapt to that range, and then have a definite period of time, whether you're competing or not, have a definite period of time where you learn how to get strong with a little less work, a little more effort, and let yourself experience those new loads when you're actually recovered enough to get that surge of growth. So that's a very productive, of all the things you could change between these different phases, I think effort and volume is probably the most straightforward and will lead you to the most dramatic changes and growth once you kind of switch from one flavor to the next. So that's my thoughts on that. So overtraining, is it a thing? If you've ever worked hard enough to where you stopped growing and actually started regressing, I think that's your answer right there. So it doesn't mean we all have to be, you know, sticking IVs of vitamins in our arm, or, you know, buying $200 worth of supplements to keep ourselves revving like a sports car. It really is just a matter of making your training stress sustainable. And if you're not doing that, you're not going very far anyways. So that's my 2 cents on that. So thanks for watching, guys. Get a shout out to Daniel Erb for this. Check out the Patreon. We got some good videos there. Until next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.